Welcome to Skip the Queue, a podcast for people working in and working with visitor attractions. I'm your host, Paul Marden.
In today's episode, I'm joined by Abi Fafolu, the founder of the Lit Lab. Abi has a master's degree in bioengineering from Imperial College and over 7 years' experience in the public engagement with science. Since joining the UK government in 2015, she's worked in strategy, policy and programmes across 4 government departments. She's currently a government policy and strategy maker and runs the Lit Laboratory, a science and SIP experience, reconnecting underrepresented audiences aged 21 to 40 with science. Unfortunately, the internet wasn't kind to us when we recorded this conversation, so the audio quality isn't great, but the conversation definitely was.
Welcome, Abi. Welcome to Skip the Queue.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me.
It's lovely to have you. Today's a little bit weird because we're recording this just before Christmas, but it's not actually going to go out until the new year. So what I'm going to say is Happy New Year to you. I hope you've had a lovely Christmas, but the reality is we haven't had it yet, so it's a little bit strange, but there we go.
Thank you, and likewise.
So we always start our interviews with some icebreaker questions, which you're never prepared for. So here goes nothing. I've got a couple for you. I think they're quite nice ones, actually. What's your go-to coffee order when you go to a coffee shop of your choice?
So embarrassingly, I saw a skit about this recently, where I thought that I had a unique choice, but clearly I've been brainwashed by the internet. It is a skinny flat white. And the skit that I saw actually was people ordering hot chocolate, which has gone extinct in coffee shops. So I think there were a few people doing kind of hot chocolate watching. They were seeing where the people would order hot chocolates and have the binoculars out to watch those people as they made that rare order in the shop. But no, mine is very common. It's a skinny flat white.
So mine is just a normal straight up flat white. No nonsense, no fuss. Just give me coffee. I just want a nice coffee. My daughter, her order, she's only 11, but she's taken to iced hot chocolate. But what do you call it? Is it iced chocolate, like an iced coffee, or is it an iced hot chocolate? I always stumble over the order, and it's never up on the menu, so I always feel a bit awkward asking for whatever it is that she wants.
I like that.
Yeah. Okay, next one. What animal do you think best represents your personality?
Oh gosh, I'm probably like a reliable owl or something like that. Kind of cozy in my tree when I feel like it, being a bit nosy and flying out to have a look at what's going on.
And every now and again, savage on little animals.
Oh, I mean, maybe a bit of that. Probably not as like this. But yeah, I think something like that.
Okay, I think mine would have to be one of those dogs that is really annoying and full of energy. Because I'm always at like full power. I'm one of two extremes. I'm going full at it.
Yeah.
Or I'm just zonked out, shattered at the end. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'd probably be like a Springer Spaniel, where loads of walking is necessary to get rid of all the energy. Otherwise, I'll be really, really annoying.
Got you. A little dog who doesn't know that they're little and springs out into the world.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's something Freudian about that. I'm not sure. So we are talking a little bit about your project called the Lit Lab today, which, as listeners will know, I always have a little chat with people before we do the interview, and I'm really interested in this concept, the tagline that you talked about, which was the idea of getting adults to drink in a science lab. We first met at the Association of Science and Discovery Centres, and we had a lovely conversation whilst we were at the ASDC conference. And I found out a little bit more about Lit Lab. But I think before we get to that point, let's just talk a little bit about you and your background. So tell us about you, tell us about your background, and maybe a little bit about day job.
Yes, of course. So I am a scientist by training. I have a master's degree in bioengineering from Imperial College, and about 7 years experience in public engagement with science. So that has looked like working on the science desk of the Observer newspaper, publishing medical research at Springer Nature, working with the scientific advisor in government, and with the science minister as well, doing kind of comms and press releases and related developments in science. At the moment, I work in strategy, so I work in corporate strategy, thinking about kind of where my organisation wants to get to and how we do that. For me, I think it probably brings together a lot of the skills and interests I have. It's really about kind of seeing that bigger picture and wondering how things come together and wondering what things will be different and kind of looking at the evidence and trends and things that are going on that help to paint a picture actually of kind of what the options are and give you a sense of what's possible. So I think there's a thread really through my kind of career history, which is a lot about being nosy and having that kind of owl fan view of the world.
Yeah.
I think my kind of interest and passion in science has also kind of given me a lot as well in the subject and things that have piqued my interest.
I think it's such an interesting opportunity for you to be being in public policy and science within government over the last few years must have given you, it's a really interesting perspective, and it's the kind of career that no kid at school would ever dream is a career. Yeah. People, kids at school can imagine being a chemist or a biologist. They can relate to that. But the idea that science exists at the heart of government and influences everything the government does is not something that your average kid would think about doing. So how do you end up falling into a role like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose my reflection on what you've just said is sort of. So I think for me, I'm currently the only person in my network who has a background in science, so I didn't really have a clear picture of what it would look like to be a lab scientist. Okay. You do those schools at school, you meet teachers and lab assistants who are models of that for you, but I didn't know anyone that did that sort of work, and I wasn't sure if I was good at it. I just knew that I enjoyed it, and I think when I stumbled across the idea that actually there's a whole strand of the science that's about communicating with people, what's going on, about bridging that gap really between the doing and the using of science. That for me opened up a whole new world. And a lot of the kind of journey I suppose I've been on in my career is thinking about how to really help people see the impact of the science in their everyday life. So I think in publishing, you're at the forefront of all the developments, you see everything that's going on, and it's really interesting. But the average person on the street, has no idea how to apply bioengineering techniques that are, novel and coming out of the lab to their everyday life. But then when we have a situation like COVID, where we're starting to look for novel ways to make vaccines, that's the sort of application, I suppose, of the work that people are doing and the interest that drive them. So for me, I think following that curiosity into this kind of world of science engagement has been a bit of a journey. Yeah.
So that leads nicely to the Association of Science and Discovery Centres, how we met at their conference. There was a lot of talk at the conference, wasn't there, about public engagement? How do we enrich people's lives with science and help people to feel that science is part of them and that they can influence, the science decision making and the direction that science takes over the next decades. You're a trustee of ASDC, so what does that involve?
Yeah, so I mean, you've said it really, but ASDC's mission is absolutely that, to make science kind of accessible and inclusive for more people and to be seen as a valuable part of everyday life. So their role broadly is to kind of bring together and support science engagement centres, discovery centres, and other spaces like that together. And I know you've had Darren probably doing a wonderful job of explaining what ASDC does and the value it brings. I won't go too much into that, but as a trustee, I suppose the core of that role is to give support and challenge to the CEO. I suppose you think of it as, a CEO doesn't really have colleagues or peers, and so we're her trusted advisors. We're in this case, Sharon, say,
Yes.
we're the people that help to sense tech decisions and make sure the organisation is living up to its purpose.
Absolutely. So that's a little bit of background. Let's talk about the Lit Lab. Explain to our listeners who know nothing about the Lit Lab, what is it? Let's start with the broad picture of what it does.
Yeah, sure. So the Lit Lab is the UK's first science and fit. It is a laboratory, a science-themed social event where people do sort of fun home-style science experiments, make drinks, and take part in kind of friendly challenges. So it's a social event that is something I do alongside my day job, as I mentioned, and so it runs sort of quarterly at the moment. But essentially, people arrive at our kind of pop-up science lab, usually in the basement of a bar or a pub. We've done bigger venues like golf parks and places like that as well. But when they arrive, they will find kind of their own lab coat and goggles waiting for them. They might get a drink at the bar while they settle in. And then we have a host and lab assistant who will walk them through 3 experiments and 2 games. So we always start with a drink. We make a drink. We call that our kind of molecular mixology series. So anything from kind of dry ice cocktails, cool kind of layered drinks. And then we end with an explosion. So some of our more popular ones tend to be ones that involve a bit of cleanup at the end. So that's kind of the model for the event, and it's really about helping adults to reconnect to science and have a good time doing it.
Excellent. So you're taking this out into pubs and bars. What sort of kit? It sounds like a science centre in the back of a van or something. So what sort of kit are you taking with you into the event spaces?
Yeah, I mean, you're not far off with the kind of back of a van analogy. I have a garage full of labware, that my neighbours always look at me a bit suspiciously when I start to pile up my pipettes and discard bits of lab coats and that sort of thing.
Awkward conversations with the neighbours as they're watching what you're taking out the garage.
Yeah, I mean, if I suddenly see flashing lights at my door, I'll probably have a sense that someone's got the wrong end of the stick. But no, we, as I said, kind of a small pop-up, and so really it's a startup, and it's got all of the kind of all that comes with that. So storing lots of kit in my garage means that the event is intimate because there's only so much test tubes and beakers and conical glass I can fit in one space. And then we're on the day kind of a group of lab assistants and me who will set up the stations for guests. So for different experiments, we're really trying to replicate the types of materials and tools that you would use to explore the same sort of things. So one of the things that we do in the lab is DNA extraction with home-style ingredients, things that you can find in your skin, do with kids. But we're using, conical glass and pipettes and syringes so that we're really being accurate with our measurements and people have that chance to get stuff in. But we don't do any tutorials. It's not a lesson.
No.
It's really for people to get hands-on and try things out for themselves. So we give them a QR code that they scan for instructions, and it will tell them kind of what the steps are. But you can take that or leave it. You've got all this bit in front of you, and if you want to mix some things together and see how it goes, then that's the spirit of science. They're more than happy for people to do that too.
Yeah, excellent. So, where did the idea come from? How did you come up with the idea for the Lit Lab?
Yeah, so I suppose like a lot of people thinking about kind of what they want to do with themselves and kind of what skills they have and things they're passionate about, particularly kind of post lockdown, where you had a lot of time to reflect and think about whether you were making the most of your skills and abilities. I was seeing a lot of kind of social events come out that were particularly focused around sort of activities. People, I think, wanting a bit more purpose as well when they do leave the house, because that was a luxury we didn't take for granted, that when we step out we're we're spending time, and that means so much. So a lot of activities that people were doing were things like paint and sip. So this is the model really that I've replicated, which is where people buy tickets to an event and they create art and have drinks. And really, it's a model that's really growing globally. So I think the market in America is in the millions, if not billions, as a kind of global event concept. And definitely picking up here as well. But you see it kind of taking off in different formats. So there are pottery and sips and DJ and sips and all sorts of things like this. And so for me, I looked at that and I thought, I think I could do something like this too. And so I spoke to kind of friends and family, and I said, I'm kind of wanting to try out this thing. I think I could make something similar here. And so I got together a group of friends at my mum's church hall, bought some lab coats from Amazon, and spent absolutely ages writing loads of Excel sheets about the experiments that we could do and what I need to buy to kind of get that together. And had them for far too long for an evening after work, doing all sorts of crazy experiments. And they loved it. They thought it was great and really fun. And so, it kind of took off from there. I thought, this maybe might be something that we can bring to more people. And so since then, with I think there's about 300 guests. We've got, I think, sort of thousands or so followers on social media. We've been in Time Out London and Secret London magazines and that sort of thing. So I think it's reaching some of the right people, but I think we can do more.
So for me, I think there's something about it that really attracts me. I'm an extroverted introvert, so I like to be around other people, but it can be challenging going into a new social situation for me. I might not feel comfortable. What makes me feel comfortable is being in the context of having a shared mission with people. So the idea of having these experiments to conduct with people, there's something to focus on rather than just the people that are around you. And, I need to speak to everybody. I need to be the life and soul of the party. No. I'm focusing on this thing. And the social element of just being with other people happens around you when it's done at its best, because it's not taking all your conscious effort. Your conscious effort is focused on this thing that's in front of you, and the rest of it is just blossoming around you. So it really appeals to me.
I think, the other part of that is that you're in a room with people with similar interests, right? You're creating community. There are people there that are really excited and curious about kind of rekindling that passion that they had for science, or that interest that they had. And so there's a real energy of people kind of wanting to get back in and being excited kind of for everything that we bring out. And it absolutely is part of my plans for it, to be able to build a bigger community around it. And we have some of that online. So there's a Lit Lab Patreon site where we share kind of science news, blogs about kind of running a pop-up science lab, sort of behind the scenes, and really helping people to reconnect with science, even if they're not in that place with people, but also to find that community with that shared interest.
So you come up with these spreadsheets at the beginning. You tracked all your mates in a church hall for the first evening. Was there a lot of experimentation involved in? I'm a meta level here. Experimentation around the experiments that you want to run. Were there some that you did that just weren't successful? Or
absolutely, yeah. So I do have a mega spreadsheet of kind of experiments I could do. A lot of the ones with fire I've had to rule out for various reasons, disappointingly, but we'll see how we can get around that in future. But no, absolutely, there's the constraints of, the idea of this is that a lot of the science is home style, and you could absolutely kind of go home and replicate that. So one of the things that we do online is create kind of tutorial videos for you to try some of the experiments from the lab. And so what I don't want is to have to find kind of lab grade chemicals, because that's not home style science.
No.
And so I really want it to be accessible in the truest sense. And so that's a filter for me when it comes to thinking about what sorts of things we could do. As much as possible as well, having experiments that have real world kind of application or implication. I talk about the kind of DNA extraction one. The method that we use for that at home is really similar to what we do in the lab. It just has different types of reagents that are more specialized or more tailored to doing that.
Right.
But I think being able to really kind of illustrate kind of core concepts in science, as well as do them with kind of materials and things like that are accessible is a strong filter to me. But thinking about some of the ones I suppose that haven't made the cut, and as I say that, actually, I should say that we do have a kind of core set of experiments as well as seasonal ones. So the most recent event was Halloween, and we started by making blood transfusion cocktails. So we had blood bags with grenadine in them. We did a kind of gruesome DNA extraction with chicken livers. We made potions that are wrapped to finish off the session, that sort of thing. But yeah, a lot of the ones that are kind of more temperamental, I guess, and not so resilient to people who are not going to read the instructions are the types that don't quite make it in.
Yeah.
And they can be things like, dry ice doesn't last forever. It subliminates, it evaporates quite quickly.
Yeah.
And so there are things like that where, over the course of the kind of 2-hour event, maybe is not the best type of experiment to try and do. By the end of it, some people will still have dry ice and some people won't. I'm not in a degree where I can, just turn the corner and get some more. So yeah, some of them are just kind of practical limits why they don't quite make the cut. But yeah, definitely a longer list of things I try with more opportunities too.
Excellent. I talked a little bit about why it piques my interest, but who is the audience that you're seeing coming along to events?
Yeah, so I think both from kind of attendance at events and the feedback that we get and the kind of taking from that, but also our insights from kind of social media and things like that. We can see that the audience is largely women, about 70% women, aged between 21, maybe 45. Interest really in science, culture, trying new things, meeting new people. And I'm especially interested actually as well in targeting minority audiences, so the women, but also Black and ethnic minority people who are underrepresented in science, who maybe don't have access to science and that sort of discourse. I'm really to change perceptions about who science is for. So I think the idea that you can do science outside of a classic setting, outside of a lab, outside of research, outside of academia, is really important to me. So I think it's a broad audience, and I think science is absolutely for everyone. But part of my mission is also to make sure we're reaching some audiences who aren't really reached.
That's the audience. Is this a solo effort for you, or have you got teams of lab rats that come along and help you? And
So I'm a solo entrepreneur. I am the founder, chief IT, chief marketer, all of those hats. But on the day of the event, I do have a team. We call them lab assistants rather than lab rats. I do have a team of people who are amazing at preparing the experiment people so that they can get stuck right in. Troubleshooting any kind of niggling issues, with the experiment, because science on the day, and making sure that people kind of know what they're doing. And for me, actually, it's been really important to open those opportunities up to up and coming science communicators. So, people who want that experience really in practicing and engaging the public directly with science. And again, there's nothing quite like this at the moment. So I'm hoping, that's a good opportunity for them as well to kind of pick up those sorts of careers.
yeah, it's very It's quite nerve-wracking, isn't it? When doing what you're doing, stepping into a sector or creating your own segment. Yes, you're taking inspiration from things that already exist, but nobody else is doing that. And it's at the core of being entrepreneurial, isn't it? You've got to test the market and experiment to see where it goes, but that can be quite nerve-wracking. So having that team of lab assistants, those people that are helping you on the day, it's invaluable, because you can't have eyes in the back of your head when you're at the events. It's really, it's really hard, I guess, to be able to run one of these events, keep it all flowing, solve the problems, and be a gracious host at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should say, actually, I'm not the host, so I am very much kind of in the background for the events themselves. They are hosted by I have a few different people that kind of tap into this role, but essentially they're presenters and people whose job it is to have that sort of MC role, to keep the crowd engaged and enthused. And again, like I said, they don't teach, they don't set out kind of any tutorial of what we're going to do, but they encourage and prod and make jokes with the group and that sort of thing. One of the elements of it that I think works well as well is that we try to introduce kind of competition. So if we have 2 or 3 tables, depending where we're doing it, each table is a group that competes, and they choose a table name which is made up of a range of things. It might be for that month elements from the periodic table, their favourite horror movie, and their favourite brand of alcohol. So they get kind of wacky table names and earn points as they go along. And we actually, for most events, compete for a shot or sweet. So if you're a winning table, you'll find a raft of shots coming your way. So yeah, it's definitely a social event. I think we major on tips as well as science in our events. Yeah.
Of course. It does sound a little bit like a kind of classic science communicator role at the Science Centre, doesn't it? That job to engage people in science, but you're hiding the vegetables, aren't you? They're learning a little bit about science, but at the same time they're enjoying themselves. So and you've got to major on the enjoyment and engagement, otherwise they're never going to learn something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that, and we provide some of that background to people that want it. So, in the same way that you can scan the QR and find out what the instructions are, you can also scan and find out kind of what the science is behind what you're doing. Because I think, if people are particularly curious, you want to make sure that they have the opportunity to follow up.
Yeah. So you're taking this out to pubs and bars. Is that... have you got future plans to try other types of spaces, or to take this to other places?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I know that you were alluding to as well the kind of theme of this. So absolutely, we're doing science, but this is culture, this is creativity, this is all of the things that make science real and enjoyable for people as well. So absolutely, I see it as a kind of creative cultural endeavour. I've done a few events in sort of different contexts. So I, for example, was running a winter fair event for the University of East London, and that I think gives us the opportunity to have people kind of dip in and out from what we're doing and see it in the context of other things as well. And I think this brings to the forefront even more that this is something that's for entertainment. Like there's education here, but this is an entertainment context. It really has a place in lots of different spaces, and I think there's lots of opportunity really to see where it can go. I'm sure you'll mention this, but yeah, absolutely would love to work with different types of venues. So about universities, but also there are these other cultural institutes, things in the museums and places like that, where I think there could be a really nice partnership opportunities there.
Yeah, absolutely. There's an element of, and it was something that somebody said at the ASDC conference. It was one of the questions that got asked at the Skip the Queue episode, was all about getting the A into STEAM, so getting the art into to STEAM subjects. There's an element of you if you could take this into a bar and a pub, you can take this into art institutions, to galleries, to museums, other cultural institutions, who would, they all these sorts of institutions are looking for ways in which they can extend their reach, that they can serve different audiences, generate revenue for themselves at times when the institution is quiet. And this is just, it's a lovely concept to be able to pop the things in the back of the van and take it to institutions and help them to do those things.
Yeah, thank you. And I think just to add to that, I think, we're definitely seeing a rise of that with the kind of museum late. It's a theme across, lots of different venues.
Completely.
And it's absolutely that. It's about the kind of adult market, and recognising, I think, that, just because you're an adult doesn't mean that you can't still have fun with the things that you were interested in as a young person, or, hobbies that you don't have the opportunity to pursue. So, science as a hobby, definitely something I'm all the way behind. And I think the kind of adult late space is a really good opportunity for that. Yeah.
Oh, completely. I get to masquerade behind my daughter. I'm taking her to science centres for her benefit, but the reality is I have a whale of a time, and I love going to a science centre or a science museum. And I'd feel a bit odd going as a single bloke wandering around some of these institutions on your own during the daytime. It might not feel quite right, but a science late event, I could totally, I've done enough ASDC events at science centres where we've had the evening meal in a science centre in the evening, and it's been delightful to wander around these places in the evenings. There's a huge amount of opportunity at your local science centre to find things that engage adults as well as kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are your goals? Where do you want to take Lit Lab for the future?
Yeah, so, I mean, again, this concept of kind of popping things in the van and kind of rocking up wherever is definitely a perk of the current model. But it still sort of means that at the moment, the Lit Lab is in London because I am. And
yes.
I don't want that to be a kind of barrier for it, and I definitely don't want it to stop, the right people from reaching it. So for me, it would absolutely be that, to be able to reach more parts of the country, and particularly, like the cities of culture. I'm thinking the Bristols and the Manchesters and the Bradfords next year as the 2025 or this year. City of culture.
Yes.
I think being able to meet people where they're already exploring these interests, and then hopefully see that filter out as well would be wonderful.
Okay, so is that a partnership model, or is that a kind of a franchise model, or are you open to conversations with people about how you could deliver this?
Yeah, no, absolutely open. I think that's a perk of being the first, isn't it? But yeah, all things are on the table, and I think that's a wonderful thing. I'm probably still in it's my baby phase. So
yeah.
I can imagine that there's probably a bit of hand-holding that would come before any definitive franchising. But yes, I think absolutely open.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, look, it's been lovely talking to you, finding out a little bit more about you and finding out more about the Lit Lab. I think it's such a wonderful concept. I feel a Team Rubber Cheese evening event coming along wonderful. Soon, where I think we bring the team and we do a little bit of science together. I think that might be a nice idea.
More than welcome. I'd love that.
So, we always ask our guests to give us a book recommendation. So, Abi, what's your recommendation for the listeners today?
Yeah, so I had a good think about this, and in all that I've talked about, I think there's probably also something about reclaiming this kind of nerd label. I think my recommendation is probably going to fall in that space, but I'm happy with that, and I own it. So I'm really into kind of mythology. I love Greek mythology, and one that I'm really enjoying now is called She Would Be King. It's by Wayetu Moore, and it's the story of basically the kind of creation of a new base in Liberia during the kind of transatlantic slave trade. Oh, somebody else. During the transatlantic slave trade, and it basically imagines stories of the three different people in a sort of anthology way, who get powers as they go through the real horrible and inhumane kind of trials of being part of that. So from America to Jamaica to West Africa, these three people go through different experiences of that, and they all get powers that help them to cope with that. And it draws on the types of powers that you might see in African mythology. So it's a really beautiful book and a really inspiring and kind of educational one too. I think there's a lot of factual accuracy in terms of what happens and the types of experiences that people encountered. Yeah, that's one of my definite recommendations, and I'm actually rereading it at the moment.
Wowzers. Listeners, if you'd like a copy of the book that Abi recommends, normally I'd say get over to X and repost the show announcement on X. But you can do that on Blue Sky now. So go and find us. We are at skipthequeue.fm on Blue Sky, and do whatever you do to repost a notice on Blue Sky, and say, I want Abi's book. And the first person that does that will get a copy of Abi's book sent to them, as a gift from us. And I'll be very excited because we'll have more followers on Blue Sky, because X is a bit of a dumpster fire now. So, we are moving rapidly to Blue Sky. Abi, it has been delightful to meet you. If listeners would like to find out more about the Lit Lab, all of your links and your socials and the website will all be posted in the show notes. So listeners, you'll be able to go and find out about where the next Lit Lab events are, all on Abi's website. It's been lovely to meet you. Thank you ever so much for coming on the podcast. Happy New Year.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thanks so much for having me, and Happy New Year to you too.
Thanks for listening to Skip the Queue. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review. It really helps others to find us. Skip the Queue is brought to you by Rubber Cheese, a digital agency that builds remarkable systems and websites for attractions that helps them to increase their visitor numbers. You can find show notes and transcripts from this episode and more over on our website, skipthequeue.fm.